And we are back with another episode of Take Talk. I'm here with my normal host, Stephen O'Rourke. Steve, what is up?
Man, I'm doing great, Brett. Woke up this morning. The heat wave is gone. It feels like fall again after getting just blasted with 90-degree heat here in Michigan the last couple days. So
Yeah,
it's perfect timing that it lines up with the start of football. I couldn't be more excited.
that was stupid, by the way. The heat wave that we
God,
just got.
dude,
We,
I was
we planned
sweating.
we played like an end of summer get together on Monday on Labor Day for like some of our friends of
Mhm.
kids are friends with. Like we're friends with their parents too. So we had like 3 couples over, and like there was 15 kids at my house, and it was insane. We just assumed it would be like a nice, cool day out on the deck, and kids would just play in the backyard. No, dude, I had to go buy a special awning to keep people cold. I had to get the water slide out and cranked up, running super cold water through there. It was 90 something degrees that day. So, anyways, we're back to fall though. On to the next opponent. So, hey, for those of you listening, if you didn't know, we are on YouTube now. This is our first episode on YouTube. While we do appreciate all the audio downloads, I think you're missing out if you don't get the full YouTube experience. You get to see Steve's beautiful face and then a really nasty glare off my bald head shining right into my camera. So please check it out on YouTube. All right, dude, it is week 1. And our team plays tonight. This feels like a setup, Steve. This feels like a setup. Like we try really hard to not focus so much on the Lions, but then we get opening night Lions Chiefs. I mean, it's a setup. We're set up to fail right now.
Oh, big time. Big time. I've talked myself in and out of how the game's gonna go 20 times already. It's like
Yes.
3 times a day. I talk myself into how they're gonna win, and then I talk myself into how they're gonna lose. And I don't know where I've fallen yet.
Yes.
We'll see what happens when 8:20 hits and how I'm feeling.
Right. Oh man. All right. So before we jump, we are going to preview tonight's game as well as some other games from the week 1 slate. Before we do that, let's hit some NFL news and things Brett likes. Starting with things Brett likes. I like watches, Steve. Did you know that about me?
I did not.
I have a watch collection. And now that we're on YouTube, you can get the full experience here. Look at that case right there.
Oh, that's
That is
right. It's right there. It is.
It's my watch collection. Well, it's usually on the shelf. I pulled it up for the show since it was on the things Brett likes.
Right.
I have a nice, robust collection of watches. I have, I think, 11 valuable ones in my collection. I don't have any crazy like Rolex $4,000 pieces or nothing, but I do collect. I got a lot of diesels, some Shinola, some stuff like that. So I got like 11. I'm 11 deep. I got one for pretty much any occasion, whether I'm rocking like basketball shorts and a t-shirt, or I'm decked out and to the nines. I got a watch for the occasion. So I got some big, huge face watches because I'm a big guy, and so watches are something I like. It's like the only thing I collect, actually. That's not true. Pokemon cards. I like Pokemon cards.
Oh, nice. Love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's because my kids are obsessed with Pokemon. So I was like, you know what? I'll start collecting with them. And we've collected to the point where my 8-year-old daughter and I have actually launched a business selling Pokemon cards, ultra rare cards. So we are in the pre-revenue stage right now. Our site is being built. We have built a really nice inventory though for the business. I've created a really cool cataloging system. My daughter's doing like all the work, which is really cool. I'm investing that entrepreneurial spirit that I have into my 8-year-old daughter, which is really cool. She's learning a bunch of really awesome skills. So I like Pokemon because it gets me more engaged with my daughter, and I get to have those impactful moments where I'm teaching her the ways of the Force. So
that's awesome.
You know what's crazy though? I didn't prepare a third. I like jiu-jitsu. I could probably do that one every week and talk about a different aspect, but I train Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Yeah. I like jiu-jitsu, and I train a lot. Hanging off my screen there, I got some championship medals there if you're into that kind of thing. So but jiu-jitsu is great. I think it's whether you're a competitor or just a guy looking for a hobby, it's awesome. It strengthens the body and the mind. I think it's a really good sport, and everyone should do it. I'm one of those guys. I'm not one of those guys, by the way. I kind of am. Okay, dang it. I'm not quite as bad as like a CrossFitter.
You folded so fast.
I did. I'm not quite as bad as a CrossFitter. Within 60 seconds of meeting a CrossFitter that they do CrossFit. I'm more like second date kind of guy. Like we'll hang out once, and then the second time we hang out, I'm like, by the way, I do jujitsu. You should do that with me. So
Right.
you have a lot of interaction with me before I get to that point, but I'm definitely one of those guys, unfortunately. Dang it.
At least you wait till date 2.
Yeah. Yes. Unless there's some caveats. Like if I meet a guy, like at the school where my kids go, and he's like, "Oh, like what do? You look like you work out or something." I'm like, "I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and you should come right now with me and learn how to train."
I'm going right now. Get in my car.
Yes, I'm going right now. I'm taking the kids. Grab your kids. We're all going. Let's go. Anyways, all right. NFL news. Nick Bosa got a ridiculous contract. Steve, I forgot to pull the numbers, but I think is it 5 years, 172?
Yep, with 5-year 170 with 122.5 million guaranteed.
Ooh, that is quite the reset of the market.
Yeah, it is. It's the largest defensive player contract in NFL history. I think he's 3 million above, 3 million AAV above Aaron Donald.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's deserved, right? But it's like
100%.
Woo. I mean, 4 years ago, that would have been like a top 5 quarterback contract.
Oh yeah.
This is a massive, massive deal.
Yeah. And it's good on San Francisco to get that done, because if there was going to be like a standoff, I think Nick Bosa wouldn't fold at any point. I think he's one of the most like committed guys, and that's like his personality from what you hear from people who operate around San Francisco and stuff, is that he would have had no problem sitting there and just staring them down until they did something.
That's true. And also, like, even if it eventually led to him walking, some team is going to cough it up, right? Because there's teams desperate for star power like that. Even, small market teams that just need some gusto. They would have done it. Somebody would have done it. So
he's a perennial defensive player of the year candidate.
Yes. Yep. He's the defending defensive player of the year, isn't he? Is he not?
Yes, he is. Right.
Yeah, he is. Or I should say the reigning defensive player of the year. Yeah, that's cool. So this is roster construction convo. San Francisco's got some weird things going on though on that payroll, man. Like they are, how are they going to make this work long term? I guess it helps having sucky quarterback play for so long.
Yeah, and that seems to be their pathway. Is they're riding the thought that we can throw a quarterback into our offensive system, so we may not have to worry about ever, or at least like especially in the next couple of years, paying a quarterback top dollar. Because I think even if Brock Purdy, I think that San Francisco could try and undersell him to himself, even if he made it to be like a solid quarterback. Like his upside isn't, a top dollar quarterback. And so I think they have that in their mind that, okay, we can mitigate like the money and that we would put toward a quarterback and put it toward the defensive pieces and some of our wideouts and Kittle and people like that.
Right. It's really crazy because they have like the amount of big time contracts they have is nuts. They've got obviously Nick Bosa now. Yep. Trent Williams is also the highest paid tackle in the league. Eric Armstead is also an edge / interior guy who gets paid a crap ton. Javon Hargrave gets paid a ton. Debo Samuel's top 7 wide receiver money. George Kittle's the highest paid tight end in the league. Kyle Juszczyk is the highest paid fullback in the league. So like they're just coughing up money. Oh, Fred Warner's the highest paid linebacker in the league, right? Isn't he highest paid?
He's got to be, right?
The number 1 contract, yeah. So like that's just crazy, Steve. They got money coming out all over the place. It's kind of a good thing maybe they didn't hit on Lance because they'd have to pay him soon here.
Right. They may have, the sunken cost is ridiculous, but in the end it might work out for them in some way, shape, or form, because if that bill came due, who knows what they would have to reconfigure and figure out. But a question that I saw a couple times with this is, what does this mean for Micah Parsons when he comes up for his contract? Because we've heard it a couple times this offseason that he's going to play at the edge. I know we've mentioned it ad nauseum throughout the season last year and during the offseason about how he should be edge full time. And if he does and produces the stats that we know and have seen he can produce, I mean, you could be looking at, he's going to want to set the market. You could be looking at, 5-year one, what would it be, like 5-year 180?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I don't even want to think about it.
That edge rusher money is getting steep, real steep, real fast.
In general is crazy.
Bro. I know.
There's going to be a bunch of new contracts coming too. Well, this year was the season of the D tackle, and then you're going to have a bunch of edge contracts coming up. That's going to completely change everything. So,
yeah.
Other news: Cooper Kupp looks to be a bit more serious than. Well, I wouldn't say anyone thought. I guess our guy at Fantasy Points kind of forecasted he would miss some games. So,
yeah,
that's Edwin, Dr. Edwin. So, yeah, not a huge surprise for us, I guess. But I guess it seemed like the Twitter community was a little shocked that he was going to miss game one. They announced him officially out. He's getting some second opinions and whatnot. So, yeah, tough. It's Cooper Kupp. Unfortunately, feels like a guy whose body has kind of just always failed him. Like he's been banged up since his rookie year. Like he had the one magical season where he stayed healthy for the whole year, and that's what happened. That's how good he is when he is healthy. He's obviously a fantastic player, but man, this is not like new for him, new territory,
Yeah, and hamstring injury at his age with his position. That's a tough injury to come back from. I think it's smart that they're looking at potentially putting him on IR and things like that. Yeah. I think that's smart because you'd rather lose him and get him back 100% full strength than have this be a recurring, ongoing, nagging injury throughout the year. And then all of a sudden you get him for 5-6 games sporadically throughout the year rather than, lose him for the first 6 games and then, get him full health the rest of the way.
Yep. I agree. More news. Was that it? I feel like there's something I'm missing, but
today I think everybody's kind of sitting on the edge of their seat waiting to see what happens with Travis Kelce.
Yes, the Travis Kelce news. That's tough because he makes that offense go with Mahomes, obviously, and where we sit, Steve, there's like a little bit of Schadenfreude that happens.
Right.
You don't ever want to celebrate an injury, but you're like,
right.
Oh, the door just keeps opening a little wider and wider.
Right. And it does change the complexion of their offense quite significantly. And I didn't even realize it, but he's only missed 3 games in his career, and none of them have been due to an injury.
None of them? I thought he missed a game in 2013 from an injury, but wow. Okay.
Maybe one of them wasn't from an injury, but it was like a week 17, a week 18 that were just more of a coach's decision. And then he had one COVID. He was on the COVID list in 2020. And those are the only 3 games he's missed.
Yeah, that's wild.
The way he plays in the position he plays, that is remarkable. Like if you look at the other tight ends that are big name tight ends that you don't compare to him but are like that tier below, like Hawkinson, Waller, Kittle, those guys are constantly being nagged by injuries.
Gronk,
so it's crazy that he's had the just the injury avoidance that he's had.
It's true. That is a good note. Well, so with that note, we should just jump into the game, the Thursday night football preview. The defending Super Bowl champs will be celebrating their Super Bowl victory tonight at Arrowhead Stadium. The Lions come in hoping to play spoiler. I got something for you, Steve. I led Mr. John Hanson's show with this yesterday, and I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest storylines this week should be the Lions' revamped coverage unit. It's a revamped unit versus the dynamic Patrick Mahomes-led offense. In the Lions, they did bring in 4 new defensive back starters, and although Mosley won't play in this game, but basically they have 4 new starters long-term here. But what if I told you the revamp actually started in the middle of last year, Steve? And it wasn't a personnel revamp, but it was a way of thinking strategy revamp. If you break down the numbers using Fantasy Points data suite, I went in and looked. The first 8 weeks of 2022, the Lions defense allowed a league high and historically bad passer rating against of 108.5. Like one of the worst defenses imaginable in pass coverage.
It was so bad.
It was so bad.
It was so bad.
In turn, they stumbled out to a 1-7 start while that was going on. During that initial period, they were super heavy man coverage, like 50-50 man zone. And not only that, dude, it was zero blitz like crazy. Like we're just throwing these corners on an island. There was miscommunication in the back end everywhere. But then all of a sudden, week 9 happened. And they dramatically shifted their thinking. They switched to a much heavier zone scheme, 65-ish% zone, 37% man, something like that, 35% man. The final stretch, weeks 9 through 18, their passer rating against plummeted to just 84.3, which was good for 10th best in the league. So they literally went from historically bad defense, pass coverage defense, to top 10 in the league like that. And it's not enough people are talking about it. Like every writer I see talks about how bad the Lions defense is. And listen, it's not perfect yet. Like I think you and I as fans, we're hoping for like somewhere around like 20th best in the league this year. If they get to like that with their offense, they're winning the division easily. 100%. So I'm not claiming that their defense is awesome, but the revamp started last year and we already saw a massive improvement. Pass rating against of 84.3, that's like really solid. They were generating turnovers. The coverage obviously was just tighter. The pass rush came alive. Really good stuff. And they're not zero blitzing nearly as much anymore, which is a big deal. Now you're adding all these new bodies to the mix that do what they want to do better, like Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley. Those guys came from defensive schemes that closely resembled what the Lions were doing towards the end of last year, right? Like the Steelers have always been big on diagnosing. They do mix man and zone really well, but it's a really heavy diagnose. They rock and roll those safeties. Versatility is a key component to how they play their zone coverages. So Cam Sutton's a versatile guy. San Francisco's not a man heavy team at all. They run man, they're down near the bottom of the league in man coverage usage. So he's coming in with a really good prowess in zone coverage. And then you bring in Brian Branch from that Saban tree, who their complexity of their defenses is extraordinary. So he's going to fit right in. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has done everything. He's been great in man, great in zone, plays in the slot, plays safety. Like this secondary with the way they're calling plays now and then the personnel they now have should actually be pretty freaking good. And I think when you look at the depth as well, Tracy Walker coming off the bench, eventually Jerry Jacobs coming off the bench, like Will Harris coming off the bench. These are all guys that started for them for multiple seasons. They're now depth pieces. Other guys that made the team, Baby Gilmore, making the team. Khalil Dorsey, like these guys showed out in the preseason. The depth is just unbelievable compared to where it was. Like you could argue that their bench secondary is better than their starters last year.
So. Yeah, and because it's funny if you looked at cut week for the Lions last year, it was more about the talent that they didn't have and trying to find diamonds in the rough and a pretty bleak outlook. And this year it was the narrative was more of like, oh my goodness, we have more talent than we kind of know what to do with. And it was still a lot of like younger guys, some undrafted guys that kind of came along, but still it was more about how they were losing talented players that they didn't want to lose, more so than having to keep guys that, you look across the league and it's like, well, this guy wouldn't make another roster really. Like the only reason he's here, and that's, no offense to those guys, but like the only reason they're there is because they're with the Lions and they just have, they had an absolute deficit in the secondary for talent.
Yeah. They got rid of, or I shouldn't say got rid of, they cut or waived 5 players that are already on other 53-man rosters.
Yeah.
That's the first time in God, I don't know how long that's actually happened. Sometimes they'll get 1, and then a lot of times it's just guys doing other practice squads. But 5 of the guys they cut made other teams, which that speaks to the depth. But all that to say, like Patrick Mahomes is an equal opportunity offender. Like he does not care if you're playing zone or man, he will shred you. It really doesn't matter. I'm just pointing out that I do think the perception going into this game, at least from the national guys, is like oh, Mahomes is going to absolutely eviscerate this horrible Lions defense. And I don't think the math really says that that's true. Like,
Right.
he eviscerates most defenses, but he's not going to have some easy layup, I don't think. I think they're going to make it more difficult for him tonight than most people think.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because looking at the stats from last year, looking at Detroit's defense, like this Kansas City team, based on like if you looked at what Detroit's defense was last year, they were pretty specifically built to beat the Lions. Like the Lions last year, they were one of the worst teams against inline tight ends. They were one of the worst teams against the slot. Like they were giving up like it was 9.79 yards an attempt when targeting the slot, and it like 8.61 yards per attempt against inline tight ends. Like it was insane how easily teams were able to move the ball down the field, targeting those, inside guys. And you can see how much of, like we just said, how much of their thought process was to eliminate that deficit that they had. I mean, now compared to last year, you look at it and you would argue that that is their strength now, the slot and defending a tight end. That would be probably the strength of their secondary right now with, Gardner Johnson, what Branch is projected to be.
CJ Branch, Jack Campbell, all those guys playing in the interior of the second level there. So I agree. I think that they're definitely built better, at least, to handle the slot and the tight end. Yeah, that's a good note. I think the other side of the ball, actually sticking to the coverage conversation, I do want to point out Mahomes and Goff are two of the best, if not the two best guys at beating cover three in the league. A lot of that scheme for Goff, play like Ben Johnson's really dialed some cool stuff up. This could be a difference in the game, is that the Lions are going to play a lot more cover three than the Chiefs will. Chiefs don't really do it. They're going to play a lot of cover two, some more too high stuff
Yep.
Goff actually struggles with.
Yep.
Where the Lions are probably going to sit back and play a lot of cover three, maybe some fire zone, and there's a chance that just gives the Chiefs a pretty big advantage in of itself. So we'll see what the Lions dial up as far as coverages and how they're going to disguise those looks. But ultimately, like, I don't know how the Lions in the long run stop the Chiefs offense. It is so good. The one concern for the Chiefs, like, do you have concerns about their new tackle situation at all? Because like I think Donovan Smith is very overrated. I don't think he's a good player at all.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting because like we said, like you kind of alluded to earlier, so much of what the Detroit defense has kind of been built on with Aaron Glenn is creating pressure off of the blitz. Mahomes is he was third in the league last year against the blitz. He had a 111.3 passer rating against the blitz.
Yeah.
So I think that it's really going to come down to how does the Detroit defensive line perform. And it's a defensive line with, I think that a lot of people outside of Detroit wouldn't really know. And so it is going to be, can they get James Houston to take advantage? James Houston, Aiden Hutchinson, moving those guys around, Kaminsky, and getting pressure with just, a 4 or 5 man rush from that defensive line. I think that to stop the Kansas City defense, it truly comes down to that. And, even more so, I think we've talked about it before. Mahomes is pretty good at mitigating pass rush from the outside. So a bad tackle situation for Mahomes isn't nearly as detrimental. I think he's very good at, kind of evading in the pocket. He's very good at, making good of a sloppy situation. It's really the interior pressure. It's very similar to what Brady was in his career. Brady wasn't, he could handle a bad tackle situation. It was a shoddy interior offensive line that would really derail him. And that's where Kansas City's strength is on their offensive line. Their interior offensive line is fantastic. And so that's it. I really think that that's like the matchup of the night for the Lions defense and the Kansas City offense is, can the Lions get pressure with just 4-man rush? Can they do it without having to bring a blitz? And can they, get some push from those guys that they're expecting to take a leap on the interior and even on the outside? And just to see how that progresses, I think that that's going to be such a big factor. And I mean, obviously that's a big factor in most games, but really against Kansas City, that's like the one way to kind of stop their defense is to be able to get a pass rush and force Mahomes to, have him see pressure from the middle.
Yeah.
So long story short, I'm not that worried about Donovan Smith. I he isn't that great of a player, but of all the teams that can handle having a meh offensive tackle, Kansas City's probably one of the teams that can really do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think this game you'll get to see how good James Houston and Charles Harris are at tackling, because especially James Houston, because Mahomes is already pretty drifty in the pocket. Then you put James Houston's speed rush in the mix, like the angles Houston's going to get like rushing against a bad Donovan Smith and a quarterback who drifts. He's going to get some angles. Like he's going to have some pursuit angles on Mahomes. We'll get to see how good at tackling, because I think Mahomes probably outweighs James Houston. So
it's probably pretty close. And then one other thing that I'm interested to watch is the Kansas City Chiefs were very good at getting light boxes in the run game last year.
Yeah.
They were very good at getting, 6 or less men in the box. Detroit was one of the worst defenses against the run when lined up in light boxes. And with Kelsey possibly being out, or even, if he plays, he's a little bit injured, you could see Kansas City, they started to lean and move toward a little bit more run concepts with Pacheco, and just they kind of had a resurgence with their run game. I think that's another big one, is can Detroit get spread out and still stop the run? Because otherwise it's going to be a long day. Pacheco could be going for 6-7 yards a carry, and it could be a repeat of if anybody remembers the Detroit Carolina game last year, where Carolina didn't even have to put the ball in the air. All they had to do was just pound it right down their throats, up and down the field. So that's another one that I'm looking at, where Detroit's not necessarily, they brought in Campbell, but they're feeling better about their linebacking unit than they had previously. So how does that play out? Can they, get into a light box and still trust themselves to stop the run?
Yes. The advent of Derek Barnes, his resurgence could help them there.
Yeah.
He's more of a downhill, go get the ball kind of guy. Jack Campbell, same thing. I don't know how much it will help, but it will help a little bit. Ultimately any offense that can put second level defenders in conflict really gave the Lions trouble last year.
Yeah.
And that's what it came down to. And I know the Chiefs aren't going to run a ton of RPOs, but if they do, that could really help. On the other side of the ball, Steve, in the trenches, I'm really curious to see that matchup. The Lions' offensive line is fantastic, top 3 in the league, in my opinion. They have all 5 starters for the second game of the Campbell era, which is kind of crazy to think about. Between Vaitai missing all last year, Ragnar missing time in both seasons, Panay missed some time his rookie season, Decker missed some time. No, Panay didn't miss time. It was Decker. Decker missed some time. These 5 guys haven't really played together. And the offensive line has still performed very well. So now you're expecting even a uptick from that, with another year of development for Panay and Jonah. Then you got Vaitai back at right guard, who's just a big mauler. I don't think Ben Johnson has he's not too super conservative in the way he calls plays, but I do think you'll see the identity of the Lions come out tonight with, they want to be smash mouth. They want to run the ball. They want to punch you in the face. They want to kill you with play action. They understand the threat on the other side with Mahomes. I think they're going to try to control that clock a little bit, make sure they're getting points every drive, go on long drives. I think you'll see them go for some 4th down stuff, like midfield. If the situation's right, like a 4th and 1 from the 50, I could see Campbell going for that. So I think they'll be aggressive there, but conservative in the way they're kind of approaching the play calling a little bit. At least to start the game, they're going to want to get some rhythm going and get that run game established, which we've seen other teams try this and they usually lose. So
yeah. And the big difference is Kansas City doesn't have Chris Jones, which that's
actually quite literally a big difference, because he's a big man.
He's kind of the guy that makes that defense go. He's responsible for so much pressure, creating so much pressure, creating such a push in the middle, freeing up other guys on that defensive line that, we looked at it a couple weeks ago. They don't have a ton of premier talent on the defensive line other than Chris Jones. Yeah. They've been able to use Chris Jones to kind of elevate some talent on there. And so it'll be interesting to see how Spagnuolo kind of schemes that up and what he does to, help make up for the loss that is not having Chris Jones there. Because it's talked about constantly, but he really is such a crucial part of that defense. I mean, throughout the playoffs last year, he had over 20 pressures throughout the entire playoffs. He's so integral to that defense, and he's so integral to, even just the secondary operating the way they do. And so it'll be interesting to see how they make up for his loss tonight. And I think it's going to be a big projection for them, because I mean, Chris Jones is saying he's very willing to sit out until week 8. So this game, dealing with a good offense and them going back into the AFC where there are a lot of good offenses, I think it's a big test for them, and it's a big test for them going forward for the next, couple weeks, because they really need to figure out how they're going to create pressure and how they're going to, make up for the loss of Chris Jones.
Yeah, it's a big. I mean, we already talked about the Lions O-line, but like when you say they don't have any premier talents, bro, they don't even have any talents. Like they're resting their laurels on development is what it is. George Karlaftis has to step up. The other young guys they've drafted, they got to step up and play well. But like, they're not established guys yet. It'd be like last year. I mean, the Lions depended on Aiden Hutchinson for like 950 snaps. Like, that's what the Chiefs are looking at this year, and like. It took Hutch a while to get going, to be honest. I know he had some big sack performances, but like the pressure rate wasn't really there early in the season. The run defense was bad. So like it takes a while.
A lot of manufactured stuff.
Yeah, a lot of manufactured stuff. A lot of Carson Wentz holding the ball for 5.5 seconds in the end zone stuff. So, that won't be a thing, I don't think. So all right, let's move on. That was TNF tonight, the NFL kickoff. We got like 25-ish minutes left. Let's hit a couple games you're looking forward to. I know we are both looking forward to Cincinnati traveling to Cleveland to take on the Browns in the Battle of Ohio. Why don't you start us off with that? What are you seeing there?
So I think like it's kind of Joe Burrow's going to be there. That's been said, and it's really this is a massive test for Cleveland. Now, granted, Cleveland's had a lot of success against Cincinnati. It's kind of funny how Zach Taylor has built such a good team, but for whatever reason, they've struggled against Cleveland throughout the years. But I'm predicting, and a lot of other people are predicting, that this is one of the best divisions in the NFL, and this is a big moment for Cleveland to show that they do have the top 5 talent team that we think they have, and can they put it all together? Because their defense was really shoddy last year. I mean, they had the most blown coverages last year. They were giving up 111.3 passer rating on go balls, which is devastating against Cincinnati. I think that's something that you'll see Cincinnati push hard, and I really want to see the Cleveland defense come together, and I really want to see their secondary pull together and put like a good performance, just a solid performance together. I still think that Cincy has the edge. I think that there's enough unknown with Cleveland and Cincinnati. I talked about their defense constantly. I love what their defense does, and their offense is just a well-oiled machine at this point. I mean, there's no one that can really, they're almost to the point of the Chiefs, but they have better weapons. So obviously it just like moves a little bit better. But I really think that it comes down to, can Cleveland's defense take the step that we think they can? And can they just hold coverage a little bit? I mean, cover 3 was their main coverage, and Joe Burrow is one of the most successful quarterbacks against cover 3. So it'll be interesting to see.
At the same time, though, if you're going to stop Burrow, you have to play cover 3. He shreds cover 2. He shreds quarters.
Yeah.
Like, he wants those gaps on the boundary. If you can tighten up and match on the boundary, he's going to have a long day. And that's why Cleveland's done so well against Burrow, to be honest. Like, Burrow's numbers against Cleveland have been horrendous the last 3 games. And that's why just Cleveland, what they do on defense, even with as bad as they were last year, like with the missed comms on the back end, they still match up with the Bengals really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to beat Burrow, you got to be able to get home with 4 guys and play cover 3, or at least some type of man that's going to, lock up the boundary. So, because that's where Burrow loves to target that boundary outside the numbers, 10 to 30 yards downfield. Like, that's his sweet spot. I would think that the Browns are going to be a little bit better this year, just from a communication standpoint.
Yeah.
All those guys have another year under their belt. They're all healthy, and then can Myles Garrett get home a few times on Burrow and start to rattle him? Also, Burrow's injured right now too, so like I know he's likely to play, but I don't know about the mobility. That's a little scary for me. If I were the Bengals, I don't think I would play Burrow in this game.
And neither would Jamar Chase.
Is that what Jamar Chase said?
Yeah, he did a couple weeks ago. He was like, I'd rather Joe Burrow sit out week 1 and get fully healthy than see him play week 1. Because he alluded to like how he sat out 2 games and came back fully healthy and how it changed, how he played, and that, he could have pushed through the injury, but he didn't, because it was more important to him to get fully healthy and be able to be 100% than it was to, trot out 70-80% of himself.
Yeah. Well, you know what Jamar Chase and I have in common?
I don't know.
We both went to medical school at the University of Nowhere. So Jamar and I are in agreement. Joe Burrow should sit out, and we're qualified because of our
100%. Stamp it.
So we stamp it. So, but no, for real though, even just whether the medicals, even if the medicals are like 90% clean, and you're like, oh yeah, he's fine. There's like a really small chance of a setback. I don't care. Any chance of a setback, just sit him down. It's one game.
Yeah.
So, but that's my take.
Even more so, I think that this game for Cleveland is 100% all about who is Deshaun Watson. Is Deshaun Watson what we saw in those back 6 games last year, or is he what we saw in Houston back whenever he was playing? Honestly, at this point, I don't even remember what year it was. But, like, because they paid the man so much money. And so, like, they have a lot on the line here, and they are expecting to be a top team in the NFL. So is Deshaun Watson good, or is he washed? I think that, like, tonight, or not tonight, but like this weekend on Sunday, that's probably the main focus of Cleveland coaches, Cleveland fans, everybody who's paying attention to the AFC North. I think that it so much relies on what does Deshaun Watson look like. He had a full training camp. He's, moved, or the allegations are somewhat behind him, and it was a somewhat, distraction-free offseason. And so,
yes, it was.
He has no excuses. There are 0 excuses for him now.
Yeah, I agree. I think he needs to show up right away. Like I'm skeptical because of what we saw last year. I'm skeptical because of the 2020 season he gets touted for. I didn't think he played that well, actually. So I need to see a lot from Watson to buy in and believe in that team. If he is a guy, they should be contending for that division with the Bengals.
Yeah,
so.
All systems go. And he gets a decent matchup. Cincinnati runs their base coverage is cover 3, and that's the coverage that Cleveland has kind of excelled at as an offense. Amari Cooper averages about 2.44 yards per route run against cover 3. Even Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's at 2.08 yards per route run against cover 3. And Deshaun Watson was, like, if you looked at his stats against all the coverages, cover 3 was like the one coverage that he did well against. He had a 109.7 passer rating, 77% completion percentage. So, cover 3 was actually where he was most comfortable. And so it'll be interesting to see, does Cincinnati throw that coverage at him quite a bit and how he does against it? Or are they going to mix up coverages a lot more because they've seen that, he had success against that?
Right on. All right. Who are you picking in that game?
I'm going to go Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. I'm also going to go Cincinnati, but I think it could be close.
I think it'll be a close game. I mean, like we said, Cleveland plays well against Cincinnati, but I just think that Cincinnati has some serious aspirations this year. And I think they're going full out, all out every single week. I don't think they're holding anything back this year. I think they're going for it all. I think they want to be the best team in the NFL. I think they want to, they obviously have huge aspirations. So I think they really want to come out the gate strong, and I think we'll see that.
I agree. All right. I want to go. we don't have much time left, Steve. We do have a hard out today because other guys trying to record their podcast. How rude.
Yes, I know.
But
Selfish.
I definitely want to hit Buffalo, New York. Do you have another vote?
I like Buffalo, New York. I either that or Miami Chargers. I think that's another good one.
All right, let's do Buffalo, New York. If we have time,
Yeah.
we'll double back to Miami Chargers. All right.
Yep.
This Buffalo, New York game, I'm excited to see it. For one, it's in New York. Well, not really. It's in New Jersey. Aaron Rodgers in his first start at quarterback for the Jets. The Buffalo secondary was vulnerable at times last year.
Yep.
I think they're a little bit healthier now, but still, like I'm curious to see how Aaron Rodgers deals with that. Buffalo is a lot of people's pick to win the Super Bowl this year. They think this is the year we get it done. That's your pick to win the Super Bowl.
I was to say that was my pick.
Yeah. So it's a really good week one matchup for both teams. We kind of get to take an inventory of where the Jets are with Aaron Rodgers, and we get to see, what Buffalo's added to the team here this year. And I know they didn't do a lot in free agency, and the draft is the draft, but good teams make small adjustments to make them better. Remember the year the Rams won it all. Like McVay hard deviated from some stances he was dug in on before with the way he called the run game and stuff like that. So good teams make adjustments. And I want to see if Buffalo's made any adjustments or if they're just relying on health and new personnel to get it done.
Yeah.
That'll be a big thing for me. So this is a really good matchup. What are you seeing here?
It'll be interesting to see. I'm excited to see what Aaron Rodgers looks like when he cares again, because I think we all, made jokes and prodded at him through the last 2 years in Green Bay. It looked like he kind of just didn't care. He was just kind of freewheeling. It was what it was. And, he had been kind of sick and tired of it. But I think you're seeing the resurgence of his excitement to be out there. You're seeing his enjoyment. If you watched Hard Knocks, he kind of projected and looked to be just a different person as far as just his attitude toward football. So that's what I'm most excited for. But I'm also just interested to see, like you said, is with Buffalo, is the health of their defense going to change things? And I really think a big thing of it is, can they defend Garrett Wilson? I think a lot of what New York's going to do, I think they're going to run their offense through Garrett Wilson, kind of similarly to how Aaron Rodgers ran that offense in Green Bay through Devontae Adams. And, the slot was one of kind of the weaknesses that Buffalo had defending.
Similar to Green Bay, Steve, real quick. Sorry. Garrett Wilson is also all they have, where Devontae Adams was all they had. The Jets receivers suck. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. But, I think Garrett Wilson could see a massive amount of targets. Buffalo against slot targets, they gave up an adjusted completion percentage of 76.6% and a passer rating of 106.3. So, how are they going to adjust and make it so that Garrett Wilson doesn't absolutely tear them apart? Because I think that the way for Buffalo to win this game is to force Aaron Rodgers to target those outside receivers, force him to get those guys that we, don't necessarily believe in involved in the passing offense. And, a lot of what Buffalo runs is they like to do a lot of, single high safety stuff. And that's kind of where Rodgers excels. I think he loves seeing single high safeties. I think that's where that, is what he wants. And so, how are they going to mix up the coverages? How are they going to make it so that they're not susceptible deep to the patented Aaron Rodgers deep ball? Because I think that we're going to see Aaron Rodgers push it down the field a little bit more. I don't know how to word it, but just more calculated. He did it he's always done it, but I think in the last couple of years, he's done it more just as an FU throw. And I think this year you'll see it more as a, calculated, established, set up type deal. So how does Buffalo defend against the deep ball, and how do they make sure that Rodgers has to push the ball outside the numbers?
Yeah, it's tough because the way we're projecting it right now, we have Garrett Wilson playing on the left side 60% of the time, which means he'd be going against Trey White. And then Lazard will be facing likely Dane Jackson on a good chunk of his snaps, 65% of his snaps. So it's a tough situation where if they're shadowing Wilson with White, or if Wilson is playing 60% on the left side, like their best matchup is probably going to be Lazard versus Dane Jackson, and I don't like calling Lazard against anybody a good matchup, so that's tough. That's tough.
And I think Buffalo's going to run a lot more nickel and dime sets this year. They obviously lost Jermaine Edmonds. Their linebacking unit, outside of Milano, they don't have a ton. It's kind of some unproven talent. They've got Terrell Bernard, filling in for Edmonds, but they brought in Taylor Rapp. And so I think that you'll see Buffalo
dime linebacker.
Use Rapp as a dime linebacker and, try and go for more of a speed defense this year. I think that that's the push that they're going to make personally. I think that they specifically didn't go and address linebacker because they wanted to be, more similar to like how the Cowboys operate, where it's just a lot of athletic safety like players that can, kind of bounce inside, outside, play the run and play the pass.
I know that internally they like Bernard a lot too. They didn't feel like they needed to add anybody because he was there. I talked to my guy, Joe Marino, shout out Joe Marino, who's, Bills Wire, draft dudes, all that stuff. Yep. He's a Buffalo guy, obviously, and he likes Terrell Bernard as well a little bit. But I think you're right. I think Rapp is going to get involved there. When McDermott was in Carolina, he did this too. He did this with some 3 safety stuff, for that dime package. And they ran virtually the same coverage shells. There was a lot of cover 3 with some cover 2 mixed in, but like really relying on instincts and keeping everything in front of you. I think they're going to continue that trend. So how I could see Rodgers getting very frustrated in this game, Steve.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he gets frustrated every game. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well,
he could be up by 35 and he's still pissing and moaning about something. So competitive spirit, I guess. Brady was the same way, but
and the offensive line for the Jets.
Good Lord.
I don't know. It's not not that great. There's a lot of holes there. And they didn't look the best throughout the preseason either.
The term "the grass isn't always greener" could never be more true for Aaron Rodgers right now, because he's complained about his weapons for how many years, and now going into tonight, he's going to have Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard standing next to him in a huddle that doesn't have David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins. Like, he downgraded O-line and he kept the same weapons. And by the way, Garrett Wilson's a downgrade from Devonta Adams. As much as we might like Garrett Wilson, he's not that guy yet. He might be one day.
Right.
I'm just saying, you can't argue Rodgers is in a better situation than when he was in Green Bay. I mean, holy crap.
No. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, because I think he took for granted how good Green Bay was at identifying and filling in offensive line talent. They're so consistently 6 guys deep, and New York's not even 3 guys deep. Right. So that could be a big thing. And Buffalo wants to get after the passer. And when Von Miller was healthy last year, Buffalo was at the top of the league. They were top 3 in pressure rate when Von Miller was healthy. So I know what we remember now is that they kind of struggled getting after the passer at the end of the year. But, those first 9 weeks before Von Miller went down, they were getting after quarterbacks very consistently. It was, they were up over 30% pressure rate for the first 9 weeks of the year.
Rousseau, another year under his belt as well. Ed Oliver started coming into his own last year and got paid for it in this offseason. So, I agree. This could be a rough day for Rodgers in his debut.
Yeah.
You know what it might remind me of? Do you remember when Brady first couple weeks with the Bucks? It was rough, and people were kind of panicking. Remember they got walloped by the Packers, I think, actually, right?
Yeah.
They just got destroyed. The Saints played them really tough. Or was it the opposite? Did they wallop the Packers? They got destroyed by somebody. It was either the Saints.
I want to say they got beat up by the Packers, because that was the storyline going into the playoff game that year.
Gotcha. And I remember people panicking then. They go on to win the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying Rodgers is going to do that, but he could very well struggle this game. It doesn't mean it's over. It just means it's one game. So
they might use I could see them going a lot of RPO. Buffalo was giving up about 7.5 yards per attempt on RPO passes. So Rodgers could, get into his bag and work a lot of RPO stuff to, mitigate pass rush and, make it a lot easier on his offensive line.
For sure. All right, Steve. We are out of time, but I'm a man of the people, and I know you wanted to give the people Miami Chargers. So give me like three most important notes for this game in 30 seconds.
Okay, here we go.
Tell me who's winning. Go.
Chargers run primarily single high coverage. Tyreek Hill absolutely torched single high coverage last year. He was 3.91 yards per route run against cover 3, 3.68 yards per route run against cover 1. But it'll be interesting. On the other side, Fangio comes in for Miami's defense. They're going to run a lot of cover 4, cover 6. Herbert was really effective against cover 4, passer rating of 112.9, adjusted completion percentage of 88.3%. Cover 4, he struggled a little bit more against. He didn't check the ball down as much, which was crazy. It was only a 9% check down rate, which means that he wanted to push the ball more, and it reflected. He only had a passer rating of 75. So it'll be interesting to see how Herbert adjusts against those coverages. And then Chargers were terrible against the run. They were terrible against zone concept runs. They gave up a 59% success rate against zone concept runs and 5.5 yards per carry. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Miami Dolphins run the ball a little bit more and push that Chargers offense to kind of set up their run or set up their pass. A lot of play action, a lot of zone concept run. I think that's what you'll see from the Miami offense.
Yes, that is what they do traditionally, and they're doing it against an opponent who struggles with those looks. So should be exacerbated a little bit more this week. Steve, that was impressive. You got a lot of words in like 34 seconds. That was nuts.
I prepped it like an 8-page sheet. You saw it. I prepped like an 8-page sheet of stats I pulled for each game. So I had them ready on the fly.
Yeah, I'm looking at said sheet as you're going through it. You nailed it. I can't look at that sheet and recite things that fast because I didn't write it, so I don't know the tone in which you wrote it in.
Right.
So it takes me a second to process what's there. Anyways, that was impressive. Who are you picking to win this game?
I'm picking Miami.
I'm picking Miami as well.
I think Fangio is going to give Herbert a little bit of fits, and I think that Miami's offense, Tua, and I think the boys are just going to get rolling. And I'm not totally bought in on the Chargers defense yet. I think they have a ton of talent, but we haven't seen it all come together. And so until I see it come together, I am pushing the Chargers down the road. I
agree completely. Yeah, you know, I just realized, dude, we previewed 4 AFC games, and that's kind of 3 AFC matchups, and then 1 NFC AFC crossover. So NFC fans are mad.
But that's kind of how the NFL is right now.
True.
Look at where the talent and the quarterbacks are, and look at just the competition on both sides. The NFC is all about like who could lose their way in, who could get in at an 8-9, 9-8 record. On the AFC side, it's how in the world are these teams that are so talented even going to sniff the playoffs?
Yep, 100%. All right, quick recap. I'm taking the Chiefs. I'm taking the Bengals, I'm taking the Bills, and I'm taking the Dolphins. Are you in the same boat?
Just for the sake of it, I'm going to go Detroit.
Okay, I like it.
I'm going to go Detroit on this one. I'm finally standing on my decision. I think that the loss of their best defensive player and their best non-Mahomes player being even not 100%, I think that's going to make a big difference. I have been saying it all the time. I think it's first at 35. I think it could be a 35-32, 38-35 game. I think it could be an absolute shootout, but I just think that Detroit's going to have more opportunities on offense.
You convinced me. I'm changing my mind. I'm going Detroit. Not because I lack competitiveness and I'm scared of competing against you in a pick'em game, but because I've been complaining about Lions fans all the last 2 weeks because I listened to local radio and they're all calling in, well, I just want the Lions to compete. That's all I'm looking. It's just shut up. No, if they're for real, they're down their 2 best non-Mahomesian players. Their 3rd best, and L'Jarius Sneed is banged up. Even if he plays, he's not 100%. There's no excuses. If you're legit, go out there and win. I think the Lions get it done. You change my mind.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's the big difference is that the Lions. This is a game that they should win. If this is where the Lions want to be, they want to be contenders. You have to go beat a contender. It's not about like, oh, let's see how good we do. Let's see if we can hang tight. Like that was that's what you were looking for last year. This year, you're looking for them to close these games out.
What's the Migos song? Walk It Like I Talk It?
Yeah.
Okay, talk it. Yep. So that's here we go. The Lions need to live the walk it like I talk it life. All right, that's going to do it for us. I am Brett Whitefield. This is Stephen O'Rourke. We will be back next week. We do not have a day slot set in stone yet. Joe Dolan and I are still discussing what the best option is for that. So we might be a Friday show. We might be a Wednesday show. We might be a Tuesday show. We don't know yet. But next week, just pay attention to the feed and you'll see when we come out. So also make sure if you're on audio, content. Yes, like seriously, Steve, we drove the podcast feed last year, especially me because I had On the Clock as well when the season ended.
Yeah,
we went from basically just like you and I, and then John's matchup show, an occasional 2 Bars episode from Graham and Scott, to now we have so many podcasts. We have multiple coming out per day.
Yeah.
Like, Fantasy Points has exploded officially. So,
taken over.
The YouTube channel is on fire. If you're an audio only guy, please go subscribe on YouTube. Even if you don't watch it, go subscribe, click the bell for notifications. Double dip for us. We appreciate the double dipping. It helps with the ad revenue. All right.
Absolutely.
I got to cut it there. We are out. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.